Okay, Mr. Griffith, stand by. We are about to go. We're about to record. Viewers and listeners, we welcome you to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, on today's program, we are joined by Mr. Gary Griffith, the former Commissioner of Police of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. He was also a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force for 15 years, where he attained the rank of captain in 1998. Mr. Griffith was also the first military officer from his country to return to his country with a United Nations Peacekeeping Medal after participating in a 6-month UN peacekeeping tour of the Republic of Haiti. This UN tour was also Trinidad and Tobago's first ever deployment of troops to participate in a peacekeeping operation under the auspices of the UN. Mr. Griffith also served in the executive arm of the government of Trinidad and Tobago in 2013 when he was appointed as a National Security Advisor, becoming the fourth person to hold this critical post following the People's Partnership electoral victory in 2010. He was also then promoted to the role of National Security Minister until 2015. Mr. Gary Griffith subsequently served in the critical role of the Commissioner of Police of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in August 2018, when he became the country's first substantive police commissioner since former COP Dwayne Gibbs resigned in 2012. The former Defense Force captain's appointment came at a time of weakened confidence in the police service in that country. Griffith's tenure as the top cop was not renewed, but he remains a prominent fixture in the life of the national community of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago by forming his own political party and by also being a critical voice on issues of national security, public safety, and crime, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but also across the region. And this is the context in which we have decided to invite Mr. Griffith on the program this week against the backdrop of the recent upsurge in criminal activity in Grenada. We're hoping to rely on his wisdom in respect of matters of crime solving to see what we can learn as a people here in Grenada in respect of crime fighting activities. So I'm happy to be joined now by Mr. Gary Griffith. Mr. Griffith, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb. Good afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. I trust that you're busy because not only have you served in that public service role in law enforcement, but you're now in the field of politics, Mr. Griffith. But Mr. Griffith, of course, this is a conversation on national security. Now, in 2020, Trinidad and Tobago saw a significant reduction in crime under your tenure. What role do you believe community policing played in such a significant reduction?
Well, yeah, right. Obviously, community policing, there's a perception by many commissioners in Trinidad and Tobago and other countries that every police officer is a community police officer. That is not true. When I did my research and visited Canada and other countries, you understood that it is a specific type of training that is required. And whereas before, the police service in Trinidad and Tobago will go to a community, they will be at a high table in uniform and telling the community what to do. That is not community policing. We understood the importance of community policing by getting specific officers aligned directly in a certain area, wearing plain clothes, being on the ground, socializing, and having proper communication and dialogue going both ways. So it's not the police just telling you what to do and giving you all of the do's and don'ts. By doing that, it bridged the gap between the police and the citizens, and then information would start coming to the police officer in that community. He will then pass it on to the uniformed officers or the operational officers, And likewise, that officer now, there's a degree of trust and confidence. So community policing is a critical element towards the development of any police service and to bridge that gap between the citizens and the police service.
So what I hear you saying here is that police has to be embedded in the community. It's not only about the community offering tips in respect of what's happening there, but you have to know the community in which you serve.
That's right, yeah, and that is why it was important that when you had community policing, you have the officers specifically assigned. It's not just because usually officers will be transferred constantly. You got to have officers in that area, and because that is what will build trust, especially when it's that you have areas, probably gang activity, persons who may not have a degree of trust in the police service, putting an officer there and letting him become part of the community, whether it's he lives there, he visits there frequently. Just shifting them constantly is not going to solve. It's not going to solve the problem. So you got the police in that area, but it's besides just having community police officers in areas, the concept of community policing can expand so much more. Like for example, we are aware of the importance and the excitement of sport in the Caribbean. When I formed something known as the Commissioner's Cup and put in football as an avenue to bridge the gap between communities. So whether you had small towns, communities, neighborhoods where sometimes there was a degree of conflict between both parties, let us solve it on the football field. And then when they went on the football field, so we started getting in the Commissioner's Cup, that was from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The battle was solved on the field, and then you were actually getting gang leaders being there watching the other gang leader, and then they started socializing and understanding that, hey, we are all one. So that's another avenue of community policing. Other aspects would have been something I did known as Crossroads, getting police officers to just be on the block, become big brothers. We trained 1,000 police officers to become a big brother to 1,000 at-risk youths. So rather than these 1,000 at-risk youths, some of them being arrested for misdemeanors and then having to go to prison, and then they probably come out more hardened criminals because of our poor recidivism based on poor rehabilitation, have them be linked to that police officer so he becomes their big brother, and being able to socialize with them, being able to train them and mold the character of that young person. Also, there are many aspects of community policing. It is not just about the police officer just turning up there and having meetings with the community.
Absolutely, and that is a very important point. ACP Cohen in Grenada, here in Grenada, he made the point that community policing is a multifaceted way of thinking about policing, but it does bring benefits in respect of lowering the temperature, as you say. Now, let us talk about the role of communities in helping to solve unsolved crimes. Now, Grenada is known as having as one of the best detection rates in the Caribbean. Perhaps it's because of the size of Grenada, right? But of course, in Trinidad, we know that the detection rate is much significantly lower, and of course, we obviously cannot compare apples to oranges here. But do you believe that there still is a role for people to come forward in helping to solve crime, witnesses, and the importance of witnesses in helping to solve a lot of unsolved crime in communities?
Yeah, definitely, but don't undermine the importance of the high level of the detection rates in Grenada. It is probably because of good policing, good technology, and that degree of cooperation and trust and confidence that the public has with the police service in Grenada. In Trinidad and Tobago, I realized that there was a massive concern always about the detection rate, about the low detection rate. But the reason for that, it is not so much because of poor technology or poor investigative systems by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because you will see something similar in Chicago and other places where there's a high degree of gang activity. Because when you have those type of murders, there's very little that the police can do in detection. So this is not about an incident taking place in a house and then you're going and you're finding evidence, you're doing DNA samples, you're looking for video footage. On most occasions with a gang-related murder, it's a drive-by, it's somebody walking in an alley 2 o'clock in the morning where nobody is seeing anything. And the few who actually see it, they are not going to say anything. So that is where I realized, okay, so the detection rate is not going to get much higher because of these type of murders. And as it happens worldwide, if there's a gang-related murder, the possibility of the detection rate for that is going to be very low. And it has nothing to do with the poor policing. It just has to do with citizens are afraid, they do not want to come forward, they do not want to be part of it. And where these murders take place in the middle of the street, 2 o'clock in the morning in an alley, as I said. So you're not going to get that type of requirement for that investigative procedure for police officers to see if they could find some degree of evidence to target it to a criminal. A drive-by shooting and so forth is difficult. So what it is I did was to put something more known as predictive policing, preventing it from taking place in the first place, rather than trying to see if we can find a way to increase the detection rate, even though we did that through improved technology and so forth, and getting the public to have confidence and trust in the police service. But the concept of predictive policing would be having avenues to anticipate a crime that is about to take place. We did a lot of work with the NYPD. I was able to brother the NYPD with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and through certain things such as social media units. The police service in New York City, for example, they have a social media unit and they monitor things on social media whereby gangs will actually be boasting about crimes that they committed, boast about crimes that they're about to commit, and the police, they use that as an avenue to prevent the crime from taking place or to actually solve the crime. So through social media, through technology as well, there can be avenues. Also, what we did to assist in improving the detection rate, when I became Commissioner of Police, public confidence and trust in the police service was at an all-time low. It was 14%, 1-4. It was the lowest of all arms in the public service. And that is where, if you're not going to get that information fed to you, you're not going to assist. It's not going to assist you in trying to stop the crime or solve the crime. And with that, I started finding avenues, yes, through technology, but also through finding systems that will allow the citizens to give information without fear of reprisal or getting involved. There's no such thing as the perfect crime. So we had things such as the online reporting, the app reporting, giving them my phone number directly, 482 Gary. And with that, we started getting lots of information. We also started putting systems to move the rogue elements of the police service through polygraph testing, drug testing, tip-offs, through that online reporting, app reporting. And with that, we were able to target and pinpoint the rogue police officers. By doing that, it built confidence and trust. So from 14% after 3 years, the public confidence and trust in the police service went up to 55%. So from being the lowest in public trust in the public sector, it moved to the highest after 3 years. And because of that, more information was pumped. We started getting info in anticipation of a crime. As I said, predictive policing, trying to stop a prison officer from being killed because a gang is now on their way to take him out. So those are the things that we utilize to assist in improving the detection rate, but also to assist us in predictive policing, which is to prevent the crime from actually taking place.
Absolutely. Now, let us switch gears here a bit. And of course, we're going to talk about the challenge of illegal guns. Your country, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, earlier this year held a summit, in fact, on the question of illegal guns, a national security summit. Now, one of the issues that was raised, there was a CARICOM firearms report that was published in May of 2023. And actually in April of 2023. And that CARICOM report articulated the view that the gang violence that we see across some territories in the Caribbean tends to be fueled by U.S. firearms, but those firearms tend to be illegal firearms. Obviously, that has always been an issue in Trinidad and Tobago, but that is an issue that is now of national concern in Grenada as well. In fact, the Prime Minister of Grenada articulated concerns. He wants to adopt a zero tolerance approach to firearms, period, which has ruffled some feathers, especially for recreational firearm users. But let us talk about the challenge of those illegal weapons. What kinds of regional security policy should be put in place to stymie that concern?
Oh, excellent question. Initially, there was always that perception that the majority of the illegal weapons entering Trinidad and Tobago came from our illegal ports of entry. That's why there was always a concern because of our close proximity to the mainland. Weapons would be leaving Venezuela and getting across. Not so. Based on constant meetings I had with the U.S. officials, they confirmed that the vast majority, probably 95% plus, of the illegal weapons that enter Trinidad and Tobago come through our legitimate ports of entry. And probably Grenada will be almost identical. So this is not about
And that is
someone coming in.
exactly what has been happening. Yes.
Oh, there you
Go
go.
ahead.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And therein lies the problem. So we were putting all our eggs in the wrong basket and putting focus on OPVs and everything when the problem was in the legitimate ports of entry. Lo and behold, for some reason, whether the lack of political will or understanding, when I was the Minister of National Security, I saw the importance of that. We formed a National Operations Center, which was something that was recommended by the Commission of Inquiry into the attempted coup we had in 1990 to prevent a reoccurrence. And that was getting different arms of the protective services in one area, all working together. You would have seen it. You would have seen all of these movies, London Has Fallen and stuff, where you see all these screens.
Yeah.
And in England and United Kingdom, it's known as COBRA, COBR, the Cabinet Operations Briefing Room. So you have a representative from Customs, Coast Guard, Army, the police service, prisons, the intelligence agencies, all working together to have the country on alert in case of any natural or man-made disaster. This became fundamental after 9/11. It is used constantly, especially in periods such as the ball dropping in New York City and other London, Nottingham Carnival and so forth. But it's always there's a 24-hour system. And that plays a big part towards assisting, because sometimes you get a tip-off. I recall when I was commissioner, I think it was either St. Vincent or Grenada, I can't remember. I was trying to confirm. We will get tip-off of a vessel leaving here. And then there's no immediate link with our CARICOM neighbors, because sometimes you get information in 20 minutes, it's going to land. And then now a commissioner is trying to get a number for the commissioner in Grenada. Oh, by the way, it doesn't work that way. So the same way we set up that National Operations Center, what I wanted to do as Commissioner of Police, and now that I'm going to be a politician, being in the next government of Trinidad and Tobago, I intend to establish a very powerful system to secure the CARICOM, to secure the Caribbean, through that type of system where you have everybody, there's a National Operations Center, and we have real-time information being passed from one country to another. And sometimes it might be someone just leaving on an aircraft to land, and then you get information that person just left Grenada coming into Port of Spain. We believe he has drugs, and then you're scampering now trying to get the information. It shouldn't be. We're coming into the second quarter of the 21st century. We shouldn't be scampering. So that degree of sharing of information, collaboration, making sure real-time information is passed is going to play a very big part towards securing the Caribbean islands. As it pertains to the legitimate ports of entry, when I was Commissioner of Police, understanding the concern and realizing that the government did not have the understanding how to do it, what I drafted, and it is something that can be used in other islands in the Caribbean, a border protection unit. Because the problem we have here in Trinidad and Tobago is that the police will seize about 800 illegal firearms annually. So after 10 years, that's going to be about 8,000 firearms. But sometimes in one night, we lose about, and I use the word lose, we misplace 10 containers annually. We're talking about 10 containers just disappear from the ports without it being checked. Because that is the one night, there's that one rogue customs officer, that one rogue stevedore, that one rogue driver, that one rogue private security guard at the gate. And that container leaves, and everything you have done for years can come back out with hundreds of weapons now getting back out onto the streets. So the importance of that border protection unit is to have different individuals from different arms of the protective services, all being highly polygraphed, proper background check, monitoring their finances. And so you will have guards guarding the guards, not like in Trinidad and Tobago. If there's a hot pursuit and someone gets into the port, the police service, we can't get there. So that is how it is in Trinidad and Tobago. But having different arms of the protective services monitor each other and put in proper systems to search all of the containers that enter. We do not do that. Containers that enter Miami, they are thoroughly searched. When they leave Miami to come to the Caribbean, they don't care. They are not searching because it's leaving. It's our responsibility. I got the scanners to be able to search and scan in the container to see if there's any type of metal to pinpoint illegal weapons. That was scrapped after I left as Commissioner of Police for whatever reason. The need for that border protection unit that I recommended has been ignored. So when I am back in government in that position of authority, we are going to reignite those things. And I intend to use that type of research and information I have to assist our other Caribbean neighbors to form similar units to assist in stopping illegal weapons from entering their country.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear you saying here, it's about the technology, but it's also about that due diligence of the people who guard those customs facilities, because they're under a different jurisdiction. I believe it's the same in Grenada. You have your customs officers there, and in Grenada we say bubble, but it's the kind of ratchetry that can occur in those spaces, and that's a very important point. Now, in the context of illegal weapons, getting weapons off the streets, what kinds of programs did you have in place? Perhaps a gun amnesty, weapons amnesty. What other programs did you have, and strategies did you have for getting those illegal weapons off the streets?
We hear a lot about gun amnesty in the Caribbean. Now, I can advise that those things will not work in any form or fashion, or very small, and I'll tell you why. When a gun amnesty takes place, such as in North America, it is because sometimes persons who are law-abiding citizens, because of their fear and concern that the state cannot protect them, they will acquire an illegal firearm to protect their family. And then when they realize, okay, well, things are looking okay, but I have this weapon, I don't want to discard it, that could cause a criminal to get that weapon, the gun amnesty comes out. So you hand back in a weapon that was never used for a crime. The individual really didn't want it to be involved in criminal activity. He was holding it for a purpose of securing himself. And that's how the gun amnesty can be of value. In the Caribbean, almost 100% of the weapons that are held illegally are by criminal elements who want to have these weapons. They are using it as their tool of trade. So they are not going to hand it over if the gun amnesty comes out. Additionally, even if they wanted to, on most occasions, these weapons have been used in a criminal activity. So based on, we have that forensic testing, the ballistic testing, and through ballistic testing, if you hand in your weapon and that weapon has been seen to be part of a crime scene, you can now become held. But if it is you do an amnesty, you are actually giving a person a get out of jail free card after being involved in a crime, firing the round, so we know that that weapon was used in a robbery and a murder, and now you're handing in a weapon with an amnesty. So, as I said, almost 100% of the illegal weapons in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean are held by criminal elements who want to keep it because it is their tool of trade. And even if they hand it over, they are not going to do it because they obviously will do it to link them to a criminal activity. So it's not so much about the gun amnesty. It has to do specifically with, again, as I mentioned, the technology where it is that you have these, mobile scanners that if you're in a roadblock, the mobile scan is there. When a vehicle is passing, you can pinpoint if an illegal weapon is there. I can't provide the information to the Grenadian authorities because for some strange reason, our government have refused to use this type of technology. And sometimes it gives people the impression, is it incompetence or is it a deliberate attempt to assist those on the other side of the fence? Because there is that type of technology, as I mentioned. Also providing systems for law-abiding citizens who are aware of this person is my neighbor. I want to give a tip off as to where they keep their weapons. But because on most occasions, the criminal element will not keep his weapon in his home because of a raid that may take place. So they keep it somewhere a distance away. And people, and that is where you must have a proper system to allow law-abiding citizens to give information to the police or the authorities without them actually being pulled in to the investigation. That is why I had the app reporting, the online reporting, and by doing these things using my phone, you contact the commissioner directly, send a message to me. I don't want to know your name or number. Let me know where the weapons are. And with that, you're able to start seizing weapons constantly because, as I said, there's no such thing as a perfect crime, and people will be aware of individuals who have such type of weapons. Doing that, having proper high visibility or rapid response. The rapid response is the final point. When I set up the National Operations Center, I also set up a Commissioner's Command Center and an Operational Command Center. That involved GPS tracking on all of the police vehicles. So we can monitor where all the police vehicles are 24/7. So if at any time there's a shooting, we can immediately lock down an area, have roadblocks, and target that individual to be able to seize that illegal weapon. So those are 3 or 4 important points. A final point that must take place is legislation, because if a criminal believes that he can have an illegal firearm, he can use it, and then he is held, and he knows that he can easily get bail, 5,000 TT bail for or whatever, and he can then leave. He will now get another firearm, commit a crime to pay the bail, and he's back out onto the streets. I push heavy as the Minister of National Security for such offenses to be non-bailable. You have an illegal weapon. You don't need to have an automatic weapon to be known as a terrorist. You have a weapon that can actually kill 12, 13 persons at one time. You make it non-bailable. You try to get swift justice to have that person incarcerated for 10 plus years. You get him out of the system. So it is easier to get the individuals who hold illegal weapons, get them out, than actually putting focus on getting illegal weapons. Because you seize the illegal weapons, they're going to find another weapon. So it is important not just to go after the illegal weapons, but the perpetrators of those who actually carry these weapons and also import it.
Absolutely, that is a very important point that you make there. It's more than a two prong. It's a multi-pronged strategy here. Now in Grenada, over the last, and I reached out to you when one of those incidents occurred in August. We had a cross-border shooting in Grenada. Of course, this matter is still an active investigation, so we're not going to get into the matters, the meat of the matter in respect of this case, because it is sub judice. But there was also another recent cross-border shooting. That one involved a Vincentian national who lived in Grenada, but he was shot multiple times in broad daylight in a southern community on the island in Grenada. Cross-border homicides are not new, are very new to us in Grenada. It's very new. It's a very novel concept. Have you come across those types of cross-border homicides in Trinidad and Tobago? And if so, when you were Commissioner of Police, National Security Minister, National Security Advisor, what was the approach to dealing with cross-border, shall we say, hit attempts or hit crimes?
Yeah, we got it a lot more with persons from the underworld in Latin America, Venezuelans and Colombians coming across into Trinidad, becoming part of the gang activity. They lifted the standard of gangs in Trinidad and Tobago because of their type of training and understanding that type of crime. So when we started getting individuals from Venezuela and Colombia becoming part of the gangs, because of that they started becoming, even though Trinidad and Tobago had major gangs such as the Muslim gang and the Rasta gang, with all of these different gangs, the Venezuelans started infiltrating. They wanted to get part of the drug trade. They wanted to get part of the concept of with illegal arms. And with that, obviously, there was a problem because those individuals now started bringing in a higher brand of criminal activity, such as the automatic weapons. And with they were able to have contacts in North America to bring in automatic firearms. Whereas before, the criminal elements, probably 20 or 15 years ago, would have a sidearm. Now they started having weapons that can fire 35 rounds in 3 seconds, that automatic assault weapon. So it lifted the concern, which is why I started, I made that statement, because even these individuals started being bold enough to be involved in shootouts with the police before my watch, and the police will back off. And then I took the fight to them, and that's why I bought that line, one shot, one kill. Because if it is that you're going after police officers, we are coming for you. And there wasn't that concern of one shot, one kill, but that is anybody who is trained with a firearm will understand what it means. Before they will tell the police, well, you should shoot the person in their arm and their leg. I said, no, you're going in the position to neutralize them, because if you take too long, it will allow that individual the possibility to come back after you. So yeah, there were those concerns. The police, obviously, we were targeted. Thankfully, under my watch in the 3 years, no police officer was killed in the line of duty, but almost every week there would have been shootings of police officers. And I was forced to take the fight to the criminals, peg them back, and it worked. It played a big part towards the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. So that was my last year. The number of murders would have been the lowest in 17 years. Yeah. The last time would have been that number of murders in my last full year would have been 2004, so in Trinidad and Tobago. So it worked. We put fear back in the criminals. We were able to peg them back. So even though there was that type of cross-border activity, sometimes Venezuelan individuals forming their own gangs, trying to get the tools. But again, let me quickly add, all of these things, one of the biggest concerns that cause gang-related activity in Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't know if it's the same situation in Grenada, I hope not, I'm always willing to give advice, had to do with politicians. Our politicians played a very big part in funding the gangs, because politicians believe that if you give these gangs lots of funds, they will vote for you, they will support you, and they will not commit crime. That is not true. When you play with filthy animals, you will get fleas. And I constantly spoke about that, even when I was Minister of National Security in my own government, I was Commissioner of Police, and we have seen administrations do that. I am getting back into government to put an end to it once and for all. You cannot be giving a gang a $5 million TT contract to build a box train that really costs $50,000, and the profit that they make is not going to be used towards developing the community. They use the profit to pay more gang members, to hire more gang members, to bring in more drugs, to sell more drugs, to bring in more illegal weapons, and to put hits on other gang members to get their state contracts. It's a domino effect. and the politicians are the ones who have been the cause of it. So you put an end to it, you take away that feeding frenzy from these criminals. They have nothing to fight for. They have nothing. There's no profit to get drugs, to get more weapons, to hire more gang members, to put hits on others, to get their gangs and to get their gang contracts. So that plays a very big part in the whole problem we had put in the gang-related activity in Trinidad and Tobago, and we still do.
Yeah. Fortunately, we do not have that issue in Grenada. I hope it does not get to that, because again, it's like you are beholden to these gang figures, right? And of course, you use these gang figures then to deputize people to get people to vote for you and things like that, right? We don't have that. Hopefully, we don't get
Good
to
for
that
you.
stage.
Keep it that way.
But Mr. Griffith, in respect of these cross-border sort of activities, do you feel as if, at least in the context of Trinidad, that we have now adopted this new culture of cross-border targeted hits on citizens who might not be living in Trinidad and Tobago, for example, who might be living in another island, and somebody pay to put out a hit on that person, even if they're not in their home country?
No. I haven't seen that type of data to any extent. Of persons who may leave one island, go to another, and then hits will be put on that individual. That type of synergy, that type of communication between gangs throughout the Caribbean, we have not seen it. I haven't seen situations of persons coming to Trinidad and Tobago and being killed because of a situation that they may be involved in other islands. If it is there are one or two, it will be very isolated. So thankfully, we have not reached that situation. What is important that can work is we have a problem where even when you arrest the gang member, the gang leader, the big gang guy, you put him into the Trinidad and Tobago prison, he still controls his gang on the outside, because there are individuals that will come to visit him. He will be passing information on to them. There will be sometimes prison officers who will be on the take. Messages will be passed. Hits will be made from shots being called within the prison walls. And that is a very serious problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago. Again, what I intend to do is twofold. Firstly, have an input of private security in the prisons. When I did a lot of research, we saw the importance of privatizing the prisons, not removing the prison officers, but having some degree of an external element to monitor what it is that we could. There was a situation where this individual was actually calling hits on persons outside, and we were able to lock and realize it was his cell. And we seized his phone. This happened 3 times in 24 hours. As soon as we seized his phone, he got another phone within an hour. So that obviously came from prison officers. 3 phones in 24 hours. As soon as we seized, he got one. Seized, he got one. And so, and this is not in any way to discredit Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service. These guys are highly trained, but in the same way, you're going to get rogue elements in the police. You're going to get it in the prison service. How best, and the same way I spoke about with customs on the port.
Customs, yeah.
How do you deal with it? Put in different arms of the protective services, all working together. So unless you could have every single element all corrupt and all rogue, you're going to have one person spilling the beans on the other. So that's why privatizing the prison by getting small certain elements inside the prison to monitor these prison officers, because they allow the cigarettes, the phones, the drugs to come in, the messages to be passed for, hits to be put on the outside. So that is one element, because when you put them inside there, you got to keep them. I actually I actually paid for, as the Commissioner of Police, a wing in the Trinidad and Tobago prison where it was locked down, that phone calls could not be made, nothing could be, and that sent some of these gang leaders crazy, because they realized now they couldn't send messages. So it could have been done. It could still be done. And so that is one element. The other has to do with when you get these individuals who you know they would be a threat to the state, an enemy of the state. We can do that type of transfer of prisoners between different islands in the Caribbean, because you have this gang member who's well known in Trinidad, and he will have links with prison officers in Trinidad. But you take him and you send him to Barbados. You send Barbados hardened criminal into Grenada. You send a Grenadian hardened criminal into the Trinidad prison. So you do that transfer of these hardened criminals. So it makes it difficult for them to have that degree of communication and collaboration for them to continue their trade. It is something that I was working on as the Minister of National Security. I was trying to get this present Trinidad government, to understand the value. they don't understand much when it comes to national security, but it's something definitely I will look into in the next 60 months when the government changes in Trinidad and Tobago.
Absolutely. And you sounded very confident. You keep saying when the government changes, when you become in the government. So what we will do, Mr. Griffith, we will take a quick break right now, and then we will come back to segue into your new public role as a politician, and your new public role in respect of showing up your expertise as in the national security space, in positioning yourself for national politics. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We're here with Mr. Gary Griffith, the former Commissioner of Police of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Spice Alcohol Grenada. My name is Crystal Simeon, and I am the owner of Island Learning Grenada. A bit about myself. I am a Grenadian, born and raised in Grenada from the Virgin Parish of St. David. I have lived in Grenada for most of my life. I was educated in Grenada and moved to Canada in 2013 and have been living in Western Canada for the last 10 years. At Island Learning Grenada, we are focused on educating on everything Grenadian. Special offering for members of the Grenadian diaspora. You can contact us on 473-535-4745, or you can register for our personalized webinars on our website, www.islandlearning.gd. Once you sign up, we'll send an email communication to you once you register on our website. Grow your love, passion, commitment, connection. 2473. Bye.
Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I will say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Pei, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Pei? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC
to do this poll? Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop it. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more, who've always aspired to do better, who've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time.
want to be queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
And if you're not careful with how and what you say on radio, you will cause people to fight here.
I thrive on that controversy. Some people hate it, but I love it. In other words, every time something goes viral, it's about Kem Jones.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run an election, to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call, and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to the Bubb Report. We are in conversation with the former Commissioner of Police of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Gary Griffith, who has a wealth of expertise in the national and regional security space. And we are discussing with Mr. Griffith issues of national security and crime against the backdrop of Grenada's own upsurge in crime. In fact, this year in Grenada, we have seen a significant increase in crime that has not been seen in many, many years. And that has concerned many people in the national community. And of course, as a programming note, we did invite ASP Vanny Cohen of the Royal Grenada Police Force, as well as a representative of the National Security Division of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Both gentlemen unfortunately had to decline, but Mr. Griffith still was able to make time for us today. And of course, Mr. Griffith, for the remaining time that we have, for the 15 more minutes time that we have with you, sir, we're going to talk about your segue into politics. You are now the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance. You got into an alliance with the opposition people's, that's the United National Congress, not the People's National Movement.
It would be the opposition in the near future. Yeah.
But you got into alliance for them in your first foray into national politics. Well, at the local level, at least in the local government elections. Mr. Griffith, why was there a need to partner with your former colleagues in government who you did not necessarily have a good ending with in terms of your relationship when you were a national security advisor?
Well, yeah, well, I don't think it was about not having a good ending. My style has always been that I will always put my priority on my God, my country, citizens of my country. And and unlike most politicians, they forget their oath in office. And that oath, if it is that you stay true, you stay firm to what it is that is right, you would step on toes. So so there was a situation where I stood firm to say that I will say and do what it is that I will speak the truth. And others may have been concerned about it, similar to me when I was Commissioner of Police. And government officials were trying to influence me to target and arrest political opponents. And I basically told them where to get off. And so I would have stepped on toes because I stand firm on what I believe in. I'm very God-fearing, and nothing is going to change. So as it pertains to the UNC, there was never any degree of animosity. And I think that is where it is that the present government thought that because I left the UNC when I was Minister of National Security, that there would be some degree of payback as Commissioner of Police. I don't do that. There were several occasions where persons in the PNM were arrested under my watch. Several of them were cleared of wrongdoing. A few were arrested under the UNC as Commissioner of Police. Several of them were cleared of wrongdoing. I don't see the party card when I make those decisions. As it pertains to the politics, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have this first past the post system where you have the PNM and the UNC, and the base of both parties are very strong. Both parties have done tremendous good for the country. They would have made mistakes as all political parties do. So I didn't get back into the politics to point fingers at anyone or just to jump and socialize and be close affiliates with others just for the sake of it. The problem is that there's always a third arm of representation that is required in Trinidad and Tobago. And those are persons who are not a PNM till I die or born a UNC and I will die a UNC. And with that those numbers have increased over the last few years. It started in 1981 with the ONR, and they got 91,000 votes without a seat. And then they joined with the ULF at the time that became the UNC, and they annihilated the PNM in 1986. In 1991, the NAR went on their own. They got 127,000 votes. They got no seats. The NAR then actually dissolved and worked in tandem with the UNC to get in government in 1995, along with A.N.R. Robinson's party from Tobago. In 2007, the Congress of the People, which is where I got into politics, we then got 147,000 votes, and again, still no seats. And then when the COP joined with the UNC in 2010, the PNM, they were defeated 29-12. So right now we have roughly that 150,000 out of the 800, 900,000 odd voters in Trinidad and Tobago who want to support a third party. But because we don't have proportional representation, they can never be represented. So my concept is many persons, I mean, there was 89% of the country in polls asked me to return as Commissioner of Police or had no concern. For me to represent my country, to defend my country, to transform my country, the only way I can do that is to be in a position of authority. And the only way I can do that is to form strategic alliances with other political parties. People see that as a problem, but there have been over 70 to 80 countries in the world that have coalition governments and presently do. Likewise, they have those that stand alone. Some have worked, some have not worked. I have, because of my good understanding with Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, we have a good working relationship. I give the assurance to that third constituency that we will not make the same mistakes that we would have made in the past. And people would have seen how I have operated. I stand firm on principle. And by doing that, it is going to allow that third constituency to work with the UNC. And anytime that happens, it spells automatic defeat for the PNM. This is why I can say with confidence that anytime a third party joins with the UNC, the PNM, they are defeated comprehensively.
But speaking of mistakes of the past, it's especially in the context of the national security space. One of the legacies that political leader Kamala Prasad-Bissessar is known for happens to be the state of emergency. Many people felt that the state of emergency that she declared was extrajudicial, extra-constitutional, and that nothing of significance came out of that, in addition to concerns of corruption and malpractice. And how would you guard against that in this new iteration? What conversations have you had to ensure that, for example, you would not have a subsequent falling out with your previous boss?
Well, you see, whereas this last time I was just a minister in cabinet, now I'll be side by side with her as a political leader, the political leader of the Congress of the People. He did not do that. And so when people try to blame the UNC, it has to do with leadership. You have to be strong-minded and stand firm to make sure that you can communicate your concerns with the others in that hold that position of authority. So as it pertains to the state of emergency, I was a national security advisor at the time. When that actually took place, I think I was in Disney World on Space Mountain with my kids, when that took place, that decision for the state of emergency. Happened, it was there in the past. I, as a Minister of National Security, I don't see a state of emergency as being a crime-fighting tool. Because when I was Minister of National Security, we never called a state of emergency. What we had would have been national alert states, which lifted the threat level, and each arm of the protective services knew exactly what to do. And we were able to put pressure, like Laventil, for example. I lifted the alert state at that time to almost the highest level. And for 135 days, there was just one murder in Laventil. And usually you'll have probably one every week or every couple of days, because lifting the alert state without causing a state of emergency. So there are certain things that I'm aware of at the time when the state of emergency took place, prior to which there were 9 murders in 3 days. And that was seen as 9 murders in 5 days, sorry. And Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, she had a concern. Now we get 9 murders in 1 day in Trinidad and Tobago, and the Prime Minister will be out playing golf. So there's a difference in personality and characters of individuals. Some may go too extreme, some may not see it of any relevance. My job is to make sure it is properly balanced, that we would fight fire with fire, we adhere to the law, we stay within the law. And I'm glad you brought up the point with the state of emergency, because had I been the Commissioner of Police, I would have, this was not the government at fault in arresting several persons or dozens of persons without the right reason. This was the Commissioner of Police making a decision. Politicians can't direct the police to arrest persons. And therein lies the difference with me as the Commissioner of Police, because when I had the fallout with the present Prime Minister, he had the audacity to allude to the fact that the police should arrest persons if too many people converge in their homes during COVID, because he was not that bright, to have read his own regulations, to have understood public health regulations. You can't arrest persons in their homes. So there was this incident, someone had a video of a townhouse with several people by the pool, and he was expecting me to arrest persons, and I told him, no, I am not doing it. And you know, sometimes there's a concern that a commissioner of police is supposed to be respectful and to virtually worship your prime minister. That's only in a banana republic. We could recall 23 US chiefs, police chiefs in the United States, telling the then President Trump, shut up. They will tell him shut up because he was saying things that would have been causing unrest in different states around the United States. That's the difference with a developed country. And when you figure, oh, I love Keith Rowley, I worship Keith Rowley, Gary Griffith, you can't say anything bad about Keith, because that is not how a country works. A commissioner does not work like that. Whether you are prime minister and you're saying the wrong thing and you're trying to subconsciously get junior police officers to arrest persons in their homes, had I done the same thing that the then commissioner of police did during the state of emergency, hundreds of persons would have been arrested again. But I was able to tell, as a commissioner of police, tell the politician, back off. You have no knowledge of the law. You have no knowledge of law enforcement. You cannot force my officers to do the wrong thing.
Let us talk about your strategy going into the next election. Of course, the last election in Trinidad and Tobago was in August of 2020. Elections are constitutionally due in August of 2025. But if past this prologue, and if the data from the recent local government elections is anything to go by, or even the data from the Tobago House of Assembly elections, the PNM seems to be on the proverbial back foot there, right? But what is your strategy going into this election, Mr. Griffith, to ensure, especially in those constituencies that are considered marginal constituencies, or shall we say PNM strongholds, to get those crossover voters? Do you see a tide swinging away from the People's National Movement at this time? And what would be the strategy be to ensure that you are able to galvanize on that tide?
Yeah, definitely. Well, again, as I mentioned, with that third party in 1983, after the UNR realized that that third party doesn't have enough to win on their own, they formed a strategic alliance with the ULF, and the UNR went into hardcore PNM areas, and ULF stayed in the areas in central and southern Trinidad, and they were able to, and you saw the difference. We did the same thing. We used the local government election as a template. I went for the 31 hardest seats, the belly of the beast, into PNM heartland. And in those 31 seats, that goes from the whole east-west corridor. That who controls the corridor wins the election. And with those 31 seats that the PNM usually would have won by 1,000 to 2,500 votes, most of them they won by less than 300-400. We were able to chop tremendously the support base of the PNM in their heartland areas. The Laventers, the Port of Spain, the Movers, the Diego Martin, the Carenage, the Arima, the Sanwa. And by doing that, it showed that we have now, that third party has now cut major inroads into the PNM. Doing that, and then you join with the diehard UNC supporters in the corridor, you win the election. So there will be like 5 or 6 very marginal seats. And what if the UNC doesn't put us a candidate and we put a candidate, or vice versa? That's when you're going to get the group of those third supporters with the UNC joining together, and they win the marginal seats. That's what took place in 1986 and in 2010. So those certain areas in the corridor, as I said, St. Joseph, Tunapuna, Davide O'Meara, Lupino Bonaire, Arima, and then lower down San Fernando and also San Grande. Those are the seats that's going to tell. And those are the seats where there's a massive support of that COP, NTA type voters. And that's why even in the UNC, going into San Fernando and San Grande, those persons where the UNC candidate went up, they won by a wider margin. They got more seats in the local government because the NTA supporters voted for that UNC candidate. So the numbers we are going to win. But it's more than that. We intend to do a proper transformation of Trinidad and Tobago. I think we have failed as governments because political parties spend so much time trying to win an election that when they finally win, you say, who's going to be Minister of National Security? You don't have a clue, so you call Stuart Young or Colin Embert, who has no knowledge, very little in finance. Or right now we have a Minister of Communication. After 3 years, he has never said a word. Nobody knows what he is. We have a Minister of Sports. She has boasted she has never kicked a lime in her life. We have to make sure we set a proper roadmap towards the development of Trinidad and Tobago. So right now it is twofold. It is, yes, trying to set up a proper framework towards winning the election, but more importantly, we're spending equal time in preparing a roadmap towards good governance. Not as soon as you win, you start trying to handpick someone to make them a minister, put square pegs in round holes, and then they're scampering out, trying to form a system to ensure the development and the improvement of health, education, the economy, local infrastructure, social development, national security. It cannot work that way. So we are going to ensure that we set that roadmap. So as soon as we win, it's a template that is there to ensure proper transformation of Trinidad and Tobago. It has also to do with transformative leadership.
Absolutely. Mr. Griffith, any final words? First of all, it was a pleasure that you can join us. This was an incredibly refreshing conversation because, again, within the context of national security, we believe you are one of the foremost experts in the region on that issue. So we certainly thank you for appearing on the program this week. But any final comments from you, sir?
Yeah, I will always, to my Grenadian counterparts, if at any time any advice, any guidance, any support is needed, I'm always a phone call away. I know the importance towards that unification between our CARICOM neighbors in ensuring not just that your country is safe, but throughout CARICOM, we work together as a team. It is going to ensure the safety and security of citizens in this country. And by doing that, it lifts the country, it builds the country. So I hope in the very near future, I'll be in a position of authority to be able to transform not just the security apparatus in Trinidad and Tobago, but the security apparatus of CARICOM.
Absolutely. And Mr. Griffith, before you leave, I did find that the photo, this was on Peter Avenue. I knew I had that photo somewhere. But that year, my family was like, why are you going to Trinidad? All this crime down there, where are you going? I said, nah, man, this guy, Gary Griffith, is doing some work to keep the streets safe. And I believe you were a celebrity on that day. Not because of who you were, but because of the work you were doing as Commissioner of Police, because people honestly felt safe. That was in 2019. My Trinidad counterparts, I have cousins in Trinidad, they honestly said they felt safe, and I should come and you got this. So I just wanted to share that, to provide that context, because that was one of the years when I believe you had, I can't remember what the strategy was, but it is a strategy that really sort of kept our crime at bay, because there was an increase, but it kept crime at bay that time.
Yeah, it was a comprehensive lockdown idea that we spent months before. Yeah. And then 2020, it was the safest carnival in decades in Trinidad and Tobago. There was not one incident. And unfortunately, most of those things are established technology and so forth. They've all been shut down and dismantled. And we would have seen, unfortunately, incidents that took place this year at Carnival. So that's why I'm back to assist and provide in some way to be a servant to my country.
Absolutely. Mr. Gary Griffith, viewers and listeners, thank you, Mr. Griffith. Mr. Gary Griffith, who was, he's now the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance, which is a new political party in Trinidad and Tobago that will be contesting the next general elections in the Republic. Mr. Griffith was also the former Commissioner of Police of Trinidad and Tobago, also served in various national security capacities, National Security Advisor. Before that, he worked in the Defense Force of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We certainly thank him for joining us this week on the Bubb Report. Now, viewers and listeners, next week on our program, we will be paying tribute to the late, great Elsia Ferguson, and we will be heralding her legacy as a quintessential Grenadian woman who served in areas of the arts, culture, and education. We will be doing a proper tribute to Ms. Ferguson as she recently transitioned. On behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. We thank you for joining us this week, and we will see you next week for another installment of the Bubb Report. Thanks for watching. Take care now. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.